hear some of the fascinating intelligence details of how this came together, you come away somewhat with the perception that in some ways, Osama bin Laden may have been the architect of his own destruction, in that he built a highly secure, isolated compound. But because it was isolated, he had to use couriers to get information and supplies in and out. And ultimately, it was those couriers who would be his downfall. As Gloria Borgia reported just a few minutes ago, the intelligence action on this really started years ago, but it really came to a head in January. That's when the U.S. found out that indeed Osama bin Laden may be located in a compound in Pakistan. By February, they determined that the intelligence was good enough to take action. And by March, the president started to convene some National Security Council meetings with high-level officials, the last of which were held just about a week and a half to 2 weeks ago. Now, when this operation went down and what they were learning, this courier and his brother, who lived in this million-dollar mansion, had no real discernible amount of means of income. In other words, how do these two people afford a compound that's 8 times bigger than anything around it in a very affluent area? And then you start to look at the compound. The terrace had a 7-foot wall around it. It had interior walls. Some of the outside walls were 12 to 18 feet. Where other residents around them would take their trash out on the street, these residents burned their trash. And for a $1 million mansion, it had no cell or internet service. All of these were clues to some of the intelligence officials that something wasn't right. They determined, to the best of their ability, that their assessment was this was built specifically to house and harbor a high-value target. And as they worked that information, they determined that, yes, they believed it was Osama bin Laden, his youngest wife, and some of his children that were living there as well. When the assault came down, they looked at it and said, this is it. And when the word came down and President Obama gave the okay for this elite team that the U.S. operators, which included some special operations units or members, to go in and try to take that compound, they apparently practiced how to do it beforehand, because when this compound was built, it was very isolated. It was towards the outskirts. But in the meantime, over the previous 5 years, other homes have been built around it. So now you've got a situation where there potentially could be vast civilian casualties. So they practiced this operation to try to minimize those civilian casualties. When they eventually went in, they went in during a helicopter drop, coming in through helicopters, coming into this compound. From what we're hearing from officials is that Osama bin Laden did resist. And our congressional correspondent, Dana Bash, is hearing from her sources that it came down to a firefight, and Osama bin Laden was shot in the head during this firefight, in which the U.S. forces were able to take possession of his body. Wolf.
We know, Chris, that the U.S. government had a